My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. As you probably know, Asheville and western North Carolina were nearly destroyed by Hurricane Helene in late September. The Red Cross has deemed this a Category 7 disaster, which is the largest category they give. One of our member podcasters, Patrick Casale, is on the front lines there. He's an Asheville native who is living through and witnessing the trauma, destruction, and recovery his family, friends, and fellow community members are going through. Patrick started a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for relief efforts. All donations through Patrick's fundraiser go to local nonprofits who are helping with supply runs. Donations there directly impact people in need. I've given to the fund personally. Patrick has given as well, despite the fact he's having to recover too. The Marketing Podcast Network wants to help, and we know you do too. Visit Patrick's campaign at bit.ly/WNC help. The abbreviation is for Western North Carolina, WNC. bit.ly/WNC help. Any amount goes a long way. Even just $5 can provide a few gallons of clean drinking water to a family in need. Please join us in helping the relief and recovery efforts in Asheville and western North Carolina. Go to bit.ly/WNC help today and contribute. That's bit.ly/WNC help. The full URL, bit.ly/WNC help. Donate what you can. Every dollar helps.
Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business. The one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At WordWrite, we call it your capital S story. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your organization do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable business results. Today, we've got a fun one. I'm honored to have Andrew Anderson with us. And man, Andrew, you've got such a great story. He's an author. Andrew's a speaker. He's a master teacher and trainer. He's also a community and spiritual leader, and a certified life transformation as business productivity coach. Andrew probably does not sleep very much, I'm guessing. He's also a master practitioner of mental emotional release therapy, MER therapy, and a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, love NLP, big, very important in terms of communicating your true intent to people around you. Andrew has coached some of the country's top leaders and coaches. A coach to coaches, that's pretty cool. And he's helped hundreds of clients break through their limiting beliefs and transform their lives and businesses to find lasting freedom. Andrew's life mission is really straightforward and simple. Influence as many as possible to live a higher level of spiritual strength and create a life by design. Boy, do we need that today. Andrew, welcome to Storylines Live.
Paul, thank you for having me. What a great introduction. You definitely know what you're doing, and I'm excited to pour into your good people, the listeners today.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. Before we start to really dig in, is there anything about you that I didn't mention that you feel our audience should know?
Well, if I didn't give credit to my good wife and my 7 children, then I feel like people might not have the context to see where I come from.
All right, Andrew. The average American family with children is like 2 kids. You have 7. So a ton of our audience are now sitting there to themselves trying to figure this out. You have to tell us, what's the age range?
We go from 16 down to about 16 months.
Good news, you have a teenage driver in the family who can help.
That's right.
Bad news, it's a teenage driver.
It's good news. She's as responsible and everything that I had ever hoped that I would have in a daughter.
There you go. Boys, girls, how many of each?
Yes, we've got 4 girls and 3 boys.
Oh, that's a nice mix.
Yep.
The ladies will keep the guys in line, right?
Yeah, you got it.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. Awesome. Always good to give credit to the family, right? I
Right.
feel the same way in our business. My wife has been a great partner for us. I read a story in the Wall Street Journal years ago, Andrew. They did a study, so I forget which university, I think it was Princeton. Only 11% of companies in which the spouses work together survive.
That's a
So,
lot better than the 50% divorce rate.
yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at it like, I mean, only 11% survive.
Oh,
So
no, no, that's a lot worse. That's a
that's
lot
a
worse.
lot worse.
We
Yeah,
can
yeah.
stay married, but we just can't work together.
That's See, you got it, man. I think that's how it typically works. All right, Andrew. I hinted at it in the introduction. So what you do today, you did not set out to do this. So would you please share with our audience the story that led you to be the coach that you are today?
Yeah. So rather than starting at the very beginning, which was 1985, we'll start at 2013, which is about 11 years from the time of our recording, where I found myself living in my parents' basement, looking my 30th year of life in the face with shame, believing I had failed my wife, my 3 daughters, and ultimately for me, God. And this was a time where I didn't want to take my life. I just didn't want to exist.
Hmm.
The repercussions for taking my life would have been too great for my daughters and too great for me if I, had to deal with that on the other side. So I didn't want to exist. And I was in a place of my own perceived imprisonment.
Wow.
And somebody had recommended that I read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And when you read about someone who truly was imprisoned
Yes.
physically, but
Concentration camp.
yeah, that's as bad as it gets, who was not imprisoned mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, you start to question, can I do it too? And that was that seed of hope and the seed of the power of what my mind and spirit could achieve if I were to be as humble and willing and ready to learn as Viktor Frankl was.
Hmm. Wow. Okay, so that's like chapter 1 or the
Okay.
prelude,
Yeah.
right? Then what
Right.
happened?
Well, at this time of deep despair and having no confidence in myself, my brother recommended, because I also lost my career. I'd been teaching for 6 years and
Hmm.
I finished a master's degree in education. And so that went out the window as well. So I was looking for a new career path, and my brother, a consultant who gets paid to tell people what to do, he recommended that I get a 100% commission-based job where I don't make money for 7 months and pretend to have all the confidence in the world. And so I got my residential real estate license and started knocking on doors and holding open houses and calling people. And I was introduced to all things personal growth and development and coaching. And I began to have people pour into me like I had been doing for the teenage kids I'd been teaching for so many years before. And that lit a fire in me, and it allowed me to connect with things that mattered most and find my life mission again and pick myself up out of my parents' basement and recreate a life that was devoted to my life mission and to serving others.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, residential real estate, are you still a realtor?
I have my real estate license, and yet I've been coaching full time for the last 9 years. And I do everything I can not to actually ever sell a house or help an investor or buyer seller by referring it to good business partners.
There you go. So the evolution here, you have this awakening, if you will, right?
Mhm.
And this transformation, and you go from one field to another, but really what you found was that your purpose is this third field
Yeah.
of coaching. How did that come to be?
Well, it didn't take long for me to realize that there were three things that I couldn't stand about real estate. Number one, houses. I could care less. I don't love houses. Number two, buyers and sellers drove me nuts. And number three, I didn't really love real estate agents.
But you were
What I
one,
did love was I loved helping and serving. I liked prospecting. I liked
right?
negotiating. I liked getting people to a place where their goals and dreams are being fulfilled.
Hmm.
And I sat actually in the broker's office after being there for a year in tears. And I don't know if she'd ever had a grown man crying in her office before. And I just told her that I didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And she was very kind and she listened to me. And then the next morning at 7 a.m., she called and offered me a job to start coaching within that office of over 400 agents.
Wow.
And that planted that seed of someone who saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And she started to do for me what I now get to do for others, which is pull out that greatness and allow them to see themselves in the light that I believe God is shining on all of us.
Hmm. That is an amazing story of finding your purpose. And I suppose, Andrew, in a way, that's what you're helping people do as a coach as well, right? So we ask all of our guests on Storylines Live about those four questions that I shared in the opening.
Yeah.
Buy, work for, invest, and partner with. Which of the answers to those questions are most important to them today? And I'm just kind of wondering which of those resonates with you, which makes the most sense or paints the picture that you see.
Well, one of my great mentors is Gary Keller, who founded Keller Williams, which is where
Yes.
I started my coaching career in real estate, and I still am very closely connected with those good people.
Wow.
Gary Keller said there are two things that I will always invest in. Number one, myself.
Wow.
And at the time that he said that, he shared with us the 8 different coaches that he was paying well over $100,000. Now I'm sure that, with inflation, that I bet he's paying
More than that.
hundreds of thousands of dollars for coaches. But he had 8 different coaches. So he said, I always invest in myself and I always invest in good real estate because both of those appreciate in value over time.
Wow.
So I am someone who I'm currently investing in myself at a high level, and I ask others to do the same because that's what coaching is. It's an investment in you and your ability to appreciate not
Hmm.
only yourself, but be more appreciative of and for others to appreciate you as you bring value to the world.
Wow, that's really great insight, Andrew. And we're going to talk a little bit later in the episode about what you do specifically
Yeah.
in helping others. What I'd like to understand and our audience to be able to understand though is how does your interesting personal story drive what you do today? How does your personal story connect to what you're doing?
Well, I think everything that we're doing connects to the story. In fact, in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier,
Yep.
neuro-linguistic programming is really just the science of how we make meaning of the world. And the meaning that we have of our world around us is based upon the stories that we believe to be true, not just the stories that come from our culture and our religions and our society and our community, but the stories that we tell ourselves. So when I find someone who is extremely successful in most areas of their life, it's because they had a story that had been written unconsciously that they were living out. And yet, if they're struggling and they're wanting to throw in the towel because they're at rope's end in some other area of their life, what my job is to identify what that unconscious decision was that they made to create these beliefs that have built out this story. And as soon as we can identify what that story and that meaning is that they've made, we can follow that all the way back to its origin. And we can change based on neuroscience, we can change those stories. So all of us are a product of the stories we've been told and that we have consciously and unconsciously believed to be true. And we are watching manifest in front of us.
Wow, that's profound. So, in a sense, you are, although you are, in terms of your own life, your own storyteller,
Yeah.
um, stories are you helping people write their stories in a sense or create their stories?
Well, we're first of all identifying what do we hate about the current story that you're in? How
Hmm.
did we get here? And can we go back? When I wrote my book, Strength of the Oak, Strength of the Willow, I brought a finished manuscript to my writing coach. And she said, Congratulations, you're one of the only people that's ever actually finished their book by the time they get to me. Usually they come to me with an idea or an outline. She said, We're going to go back through and we're going to rewrite the whole thing over and over and over again. And we're going to take what I believe is an 8 out of 10, and we're going to make it a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
And the people that come to me, they're highly successful individuals, and they're probably at least an 8 or a 9. And I say, why are you not a 10? Because from the outside looking in, everyone thinks you're a 10. And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm faking it. And we identify what is it in your story that you don't love? And let's create new meaning and change the story so that you have new actual neural pathways in your brain that can help you feel differently about your past, to forgive yourself and to forgive others. Give yourself the grace and permission you need to
Hmm.
embrace all the good that is here for you so you can continue to create even more in the future.
Wow, that's really great. So what I'm getting from what you're sharing, Andrew, is stories are really central to the work that you do, and your clients, their stories are what's going to help them make the changes that they want to take them to the next level.
That's right.
Amazing. Folks, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and really dig in with Andrew on how he works with his clients. Don't go away.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hi, folks. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. We call it your capital S story. In this episode, we're visiting with Andrew Anderson, and he is a coach who's had an amazing life of his own, but today is devoted to helping people find their purpose. And that means working with a lot of people who are in business and who are business leaders. One of the things Andrew has done is he's written a book. And Andrew, I think it'd be really great to start the discussion about what you do specifically by you sharing with the audience a little bit more about your book.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I never wanted to write a book. I just wanted to get through college with writing as little as I possibly could.
There
And
you go.
yet, one of the unique abilities that I have is being able to hear and heed, which means to follow
Hmm.
intuition. And whether you believe that intuition comes from something deep inside of you, your consciousness, your conscious, and or maybe you believe that it comes from God or the universe.
Hmm.
I I can't not hear it. And you get to hear the whole story in the book, and yet I'll give you a little teaser.
Sure.
I was standing in the canyon of Zion National Park in the Virgin River, admiring the incredible beauty of those canyons. Some places they go up for almost 1,000 feet.
It's amazing.
And I was experiencing just the awe and that the power that nature brings, and it brought me to tears. And in that moment, something tapped me on the shoulder and said, Hey, Andrew, you're experiencing this with a rock. Imagine what others will experience when you fulfill the measure of your creation.
Mm.
And then instantly, the words strength of the oak, strength of the willow came to my mind. And I knew that there was a book that needed to be written. And I didn't know what it was going to be about. I just knew the title and that I needed to write it.
Okay. So, folks, the title of the book is Strength of the Oak, Strength of the Willow. So, just like telling us you have 7 kids and getting people wondering about what that's like, what does that title mean, Andrew?
So the subtitle is How to Find Courage and Compassion in a Turbulent
Mhm.
World. And we all have that courage and compassion within us. We have an oak-like strength that is powerful and courageous, that can withstand storms. And it allows us to be committed and bold, and sometimes maybe even a little overbearing in what we believe. And yet we also have this complementary strength. It's this compassion within us, which is the strength of the willow that can bend without breaking, that can lose its branches and sprout brand new trees. And we have this wholeness that sometimes feels like competing, pulling strengths, but
Mm.
it's in you and it's in all of us. And when I can help an individual, either in my book, on my YouTube channel, or in a one-on-one coaching session, if I can help them identify what's prevented those strengths from fully playing out in their life, then we can tap into a power that they've always known was there, but they've never actually seen fully fulfilled.
Wow. That's really great insight, Andrew. Tremendous. And I love the juxtaposition because the oak, I think that's probably more common in popular culture. People,
Yeah,
solid as an oak, right? But
right.
you also got the concept of the willow there too, which I think is really, really fascinating. It's a really nice yin and yang. Okay, so the book is a foundation for you, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's your talking tool in one sense. Maybe it's your life's passion, et cetera, et cetera. Give us a sense of how you work with leaders specifically.
Yeah. So someone will come into my world because Paul said, "Hey, you know who you need to talk to? You need to talk to Andrew." And
Hmm.
whether it's a friend or a business partner or a family member, 95% of my clients are referral. And they are killing it in most aspects of their life. And they don't usually have trouble making money. And they're either selling businesses or investing in new businesses. And they're at this place where they've figured that out. And yet there's something else. And maybe it is a business partnership relationship, and or it's their actual marriage or lack thereof, or a family issue, or their health, or their relationship with God, where they don't understand how it is that they're so successful in everything else, but they're not able to have this breakthrough. And their current coaches, counselors, therapists, their church leaders that have been pouring into them and the books they've been reading, they're not enough.
Hmm.
And deep down, they feel like inherently there must be something wrong with them. There must be some great flaw. Because if they were good enough, smart enough, worthy enough, they would have figured this out by now. And they're in this place of deep, deep pain. And they've tried everything and they're about ready, like I was in my parents' basement, to just throw in the towel, right? To call it quits.
Mhm.
And that's when we come in and I sit in a place of compassion and I listen, I hold space for them. And we use this deep process called mental and emotional release therapy and neurolinguistic programming to identify what are the unconscious things that are showing up as self-fulfilling prophecies and making them, betray themselves where they don't normally do this. And that process is something that most people have never been through before. And if they had, they wouldn't have the problems that they do. But once we get in there, it's fascinating what we're able to find and how quickly we can change outcomes for these ridiculously driven, successful individuals.
Wow, that's amazing. So is a part of this, the way you describe it, it sounds to me like some of these folks, they're highly successful, but
Yeah.
they feel like imposters, that concept of the imposter syndrome is so common in pop culture these days. Is that part of it?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the keynotes that I give is called The Seven Deadly Sins That Break Down, Burnout, and Bankrupt. And when we say bankrupt, it's an emotional bankrupt.
Yes.
Break down, burnout, and bankrupt the most successful leaders in our world today. And the first of those seven deadly sins is imposter syndrome. My world looks way better from the
Mhm.
outside looking in than it feels from the inside looking out. And what I do is I help you make your world and life feel better than it actually looks. because it actually looks pretty great. But what if it could
Right.
feel even better than it looks? That's the magic that we do.
Yeah, and that's what people are often striving their entire lives to achieve, right? That's amazing. Um, can you give our audience a success story or two just to give them a sense of what working with you looks like?
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about Paul. Now, Paul comes to me
Mhm.
and he has, oh, your name is Paul. Let's talk about Peter.
Different, isn't it?
Yeah, this is not Paul. Just so everybody
It's
knows,
not
Paul,
this
I've never
Paul, it's a
actually
different
coached
Paul.
Paul. Yeah, Paul and I are friends, but I've never coached Paul. So we'll talk about Peter, Paul, and Mary. We'll talk about Peter.
Okay.
Peter runs several different businesses, and he's 51 years old, and he's figured this area of his life out, and he is also killing it in his fitness.
Hmm.
And he has two beautiful daughters, and they spend incredible time together. He is helping his church find a location, and they're building a new church, and yet his marriage is a 6 out of 10. And
Hmm.
this is a guy where everything in his life is a 9 or a 10 out of 10. And he can't identify what is preventing him from getting the same results with his wife as he gets with everybody else. And he's questioning if he's good marriage material. And I'm thinking, I can find 100 women today that would die to have you as a husband. And he's like, yeah, but you don't know me. And he begins to unpack, these deep, dirty, dark secrets that he has that no one else knows about. And he hates himself and he feels like an imposter. He feels like no matter how successful he is in all these other areas, how can he ultimately be okay with having a marriage like he has? And so, as we dive in and spend 2 days, about 5 hours, doing what we call this breakthrough session,
Hmm.
we get to the root cause events, these decisions that he made unconsciously earlier in his life that created a story of who he would be as a husband someday.
Hmm.
And we create our stories based on models of other people. And once we identify where this came from, he sat here in my office in tears. And no one had ever helped him understand why he was the way he was in his
Wow.
marriage. And then as we go through this release process, letting go of the anger and the sadness and the fear and the hurt and the guilt, not only from this specific event, but from all the things that have been tied to it, we give the body permission to turn off those warning signals, which is what our negative emotions are. And we
Hmm.
give the mind and the body permission to be free and to wipe the slate clean. And for him to be able to go to his wife and acknowledge why he's been showing up the way he has and how he'd never intended to. And it gives her an opportunity to forgive him and to identify what values he truly holds dearest to him that can be fulfilled in their marriage. Now, he hires me thinking he's going to grow his business and make a bunch of more money because someone said he needed to talk to me. And he realized that nothing in the world is more important to him than his relationship with his wife. And that investment in itself is continuing to pay off dividends for his businesses because he's able to not have to hold all that shame and guilt and the imposter syndrome. And he's able to give fully to his people from a place of integrity rather than from that place of guilt and shame.
Wow. Andrew, that's great. It's almost like he had an anchor or a limiting factor that was particularly showing up in one area of his life, but it affected everything, right?
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's great. Andrew, it's been so great to visit with you. Very important. How can our audience find you?
Well, there's a multitude of ways, certainly Google, but I have a YouTube channel, I have podcasts, I'm on Instagram, social media. But if you want to go to Amazon today and find my book, Strength of the Oak, Strength of the Willow, I will happily read it to you if you like to listen on Audible, or
There
you
you
can get
go.
the Kindle version and any device you can read, or you can go old school and have it sent to your house. But that would be the best way to be introduced to me. And certainly, I would love to spend time with anyone that wants to spend time with me. And my offer for your listeners today is to go ahead and reach out. And you can go to 30minutes.andrewanderson.com and I will happily spend 30 minutes with anyone who wants to invest in themselves.
Great. 30minutes.andrewanderson.com.
Yep, there's an L in there. So 30minutes.andrewlanderson.com.
Thank you. Yes, and folks, just so you know, this is really important. Andrew L. Anderson. While I was preparing for this episode, I hit on a website that said Andrew Anderson is the 25th most popular name in the United States. I didn't know if you knew that, Andrew, but
I do now, and I believe you.
so 30minutes.andrewlanderson.com, right?
That's right.
Andrew, thanks again for being our guest in this episode of Storylines Live. It's been a fantastic conversation. Folks, please do reach out to Andrew to learn more. He and I have had a couple of conversations, and I've thoroughly enjoyed them both. And I want to say thank you not only to Andrew, but to all of you for listening, being a part of our audience on Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. We'll see you next time.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Henneke Watkins Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Henneke, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at HennekeWatkinsPorter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.